Chris Sewall here at Baseball Card Collector, Investor, Dealer, in that order. Welcome everyone. I have some really nice personal collection stories from around the hobby to share with you all in this video here today. But before we jump into that, I just want to remind everyone that my boy Jeremy Donson, the Texas Snowman, his auction house, Collector Investor Auction, CIA, is running right now. It ends this weekend. Lots of great stuff in this auction, modern, vintage, raw, graded, lots, singles, comic books, all sorts of goodies. Highly recommend you go check it out, see if there's anything that tickles your fancy. Jeremy and I, of course, go way back, and I'm really proud of him for what he's built so far. The auction house, in my opinion, looks great. I'm a small stakeholder, but I believe in it heavily. So yeah, go check it out. All right, our first personal collection story from around the hobby comes from Jonathan. He wrote, attached is a photo of my favorite PC card. It is the 2019 Stadium Club short print image variation Mike Trout, known as the selfie card or 3 MVPs. I wish people understood how rare and short printed these were. I'm a huge Mookie Betts fan and collector. I've recently become a Stadium Club exclusive collector. This card symbolizes the transferring of time to the new era of baseball. Literally Trout, much like Griffey Jr. on his decline, and Judge, the Aaron Judge seasons, along with Mookie Betts, who could have 3 MVPs by now, and maybe this generation's Willie Mays. But it truly means as much as it does to me because my search after roughly 5 to 6 months to find one off of eBay that I could feel comfortable purchasing and not be outbid or trading for was traded to me through someone who became a true friend in a Facebook group. When it initially happened, I was certain that this would be a scam, but not only did it arrive in the mail via straight up trade, but was waiting for me at the mailbox as I came home from a life-altering, much overdue back surgery. To say that I am a passionate collector is an understatement. To say that I'm a passionate baseball fan would be a vast understatement. And this card arriving when it did and now being part of my personal collection is something that I will never forget and always be grateful for. Next one was sent in by Bart, and he wrote, I want to tell a story about my favorite card, the 1965 Topps Hank Aaron. I got my 65 Hank in the fall of 1976. For the 70s, and me being 15 years old, I had a nice collection of 73s, 74s, 75s, and 76 Topps baseball. So one day in 1976, there was an ad in the local newspaper. If you have baseball cards and would like to sell or trade, please contact me. So I answered the ad, and Larry asked me about my collection. I told him what I had for cards. He was 10 years older than me, so his collection was more about the 60s, and he wanted some modern-day 70s cards. So we set up a time, and he came to my house where he had a stack of about 100 60s and a few 50s baseball cards. So here's where my training began. He asked me what I thought would be cards that collectors would want years into the future. I said Hank Aaron because he had just broke Babe Ruth's home run record a few years earlier. Larry took almost all of the 74s and 75s, and I got several Hank Aaron cards in trade, the 1965 being my favorite, as well as several other Hall of Famers from the 60s. We remained friends after the trade, and to this day, some 50 years later, we are still best friends. Next one was sent by Corey, who wrote, when I was around 10 years old, my dad gave me his collection, mostly junk wax era stuff, and I was immediately hooked on trading, collecting, and the hobby as a whole. I even got my friends into it. We'd bring our binders with us to church and trade cards during choir practice or whenever our parents weren't looking. Since we didn't have much money, buying new cards or packs was rare for me, so I mostly relied on trades to refresh my collection and get the players I wanted. Luckily, we had an amazing LCS owner named Harley. Every time my friends and I visited the shop, he'd remember us and give us incredible deals and tons of free stuff. I can't count the number of times I'd spend an hour digging through the dollar boxes to pick out just 4 or 5 cards, only for Harley to give them to me for free and maybe a few more. It wasn't until recently that I realized how much of an impact Harley had on my love for the hobby. In fact, he even inspired me to dream of opening my own shop store someday. I still hope to find buried somewhere in my parents' basement the printouts I made in Microsoft Paint of my store logo, which would make another great story. One day, by sheer luck, my dad and I stumbled upon a card show at the mall in our hometown. Naturally, I went straight to Harley's booth to say hello to see if I could find with the few dollars in my pocket. Given my limited funds, I usually stuck to buying singles, but this was 2004 and LeBron James mania was in full swing. I decided to spend my $7 on a single pack of cards. That's a huge deal for me at the time, as I'd never spent that much on a pack before, let alone opened a hobby pack. I had been obsessed with the SPX product after seeing it in Tough Stuff magazine and couldn't resist. I was so excited that I ripped open the pack and bang, a second-year LeBron James card. It was a beauty. From my reaction, I would have thought I had just pulled a logo man. I immediately placed the card in a sleeve and a top loader, and it stayed there for nearly 10 years until I decided to have it graded. Of course, I didn't leave Harley's booth until he added a few more free cards to my 4-card SPX pile. Little did I know that would be the last time I'd ever see Harley. As I got older, I played sports in high school, went off to college, and had little time or money for the hobby, My collection stayed safely tucked away in my parents' basement, untouched since they understood how much it meant to me. A little after graduation, I learned that Harley had passed away, and I was devastated. I had always planned to visit his shop again to repay him in some small way for the generosity he had shown me over the years, but I never got the chance. After hearing the news, I went back to my parents' house, gathered my collection. The love I have for the hobby came roaring back, stronger than ever, and I ended up sending that LeBron card off for grading. My first ever submission, it came back a gem mint grade, which is tough on a card that's very susceptible to chipping, so I was ecstatic. The card will never leave my collection. It's a reminder of Harley, his shop, and the many great moments we shared talking cards and hanging out, with him treating me like his best customer, even though I rarely spent any money. Every time I see it, it makes me smile and reminds me to carry forward Harley's spirit of generosity and excitement. So if any LCS owner happens to read or hear this, please take care of that kid who walks into your store with $5 and a hand-me-down clothes. Next one was sent in by Mike, who wrote, I continue my 1998 New York Yankees World Series team autograph collection. It all started with the 1996 score Derek Jeter auto rookie card that I bought at a card shop in Cooperstown, New York in 1997. Since then, I have added all the cards in the link with the Graham Lloyd Leaf auto card from 1986 and the Jose Cardinal Angels Topps auto card from 1967. He was a coach on the team that year. I've had a lot of fun putting this together over the last few years during the pandemic. As you'll notice, there are cards that are not authenticated that I've taken the risk on them being fakes. I like to think my analysis of the autos by checking authenticated comps has helped. A few of my favorites in the set are the Jeter, Joe Torre, Paul O'Neill that I sent to Yankee Stadium last season before the season started, the Hernandez, which I witnessed from the stands at Game 2 of the 97 series in person. I know it may not be the most unique collection, though it is one that I've invested a lot of time, energy, research, and passion into assembling. There are still some missing players I may not be able to get to, but I will keep trying. Next one was sent by David, who wrote, the item that has the most meaning for me is my ticket to the Nolan Ryan Robin Ventura game. I was 14 years old and I was there with my dad. He would take me to 10 or so games a year, and we'd always get the bleacher seats at old Arlington Stadium. My dad passed away in 2006 at the age of 56. This ticket is a comforting reminder of all the great times we had enjoying baseball together. As a side note, you can see in the top right corner that this is a quote-unquote child ticket. My dad was definitely known for this. Let's call it frugality. So he apparently had fibbed to the ticket counter to save $2 off the general admission price of $4. Next one was sent in by Shane, who wrote, my grail is the 1980 Charlotte O's Police Orange Cal Ripken. I imagine anyone that collects Cal Ripken, that's their grail card too. Cal has been my favorite player since I was 10 years old. I started collecting his cards in 1983, which is his MVP season and the Baltimore Orioles World Series championship. I remember him catching the final out to end the 1983 World Series. I was bidding on that card. It was a PSA 5 on Goldin auctions. I was bidding with my funds for a trip to the 2023 National. I was the top bidder with 30 minutes left to go, but I lost out and was so disappointed. I logged into Facebook and posted it to the groups that I was in the market for one, and I got a reply. The gentleman told me his friend had one, and he isn't a collector. He had just held on to it. He had got the card as a boy as part of the Charlotte Police Department during the DARE program. It's very cool that he was the original owner. His friend suggested to him that he should get it graded. He did, and it got a PSA 2. Here's another cool thing about me buying the card. I only lived 2 hours from Charlotte. We met in person and made the transaction. It took me a few days for it to settle in, but that I actually own my dream card. Next one sent by Robert, who wrote, my son got me back into cards with Garbage Pail Kids, and we began collecting baseball and football cards around 1986. When Score produced the first color backs, we put together complete sets of both. In early 1990, Sports Collectors Digest carried a weekly ad for 89 Score football at $200 a case, and I began saving. Then a 1952 Topps Joe Nuxhall card appeared in Sports Collectors Digest, also for $200. Joe was on WLW radio for many years calling Reds games. I was in the military stationed about 700 miles west of Tel Aviv when the Reds won the World Series in 75 and 76. Listening to sports on Armed Force Radio was pretty close to feeling back in the States, especially when Marty and Joe called Reds games. When I finally had enough cash, it was very difficult to decide, the 89 Score football case or the Joe Nuxhall. Already owning every other Joe Nuxhall Topps card except for the rookie was the tiebreaker. The day the card arrived, when I saw Joe against the yellow background, the entire room brightened up. Imagine the sun coming out on a cloudy day. Had I known that what I know now, I would of course chosen the 89 football case, but looking at Joe's card today, he still lights up a room like the 4th of July fireworks. But that's it for some personal collection stories from around the hobby. Thank you everyone for watching, and of course thank you those who submitted. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate your story and sharing and all that. But hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Eat your vegetables, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks everyone.